So, breaking, Microsoft intends to add Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to this year's new Call of Duty game to Game Pass on day one via the Wall Street Journal. So this is the article that they are talking about. There's ads everywhere, yet we still can't read the article because apparently I have to pay 50 cents per week, which I am simply not going to do. Luckily for us, IGN has kind of wrote an article on what the Wall Street Journal wrote on. So this is what they have to say. Microsoft plans a major shakeup of this video game sales strategy by releasing the coming installment of Call of Duty to subscription service instead of the long-time lucrative approach of only selling it a la carte. So what they mean by that is Game Pass, you pay a monthly subscription, you get access to a bunch of games. Most, if not all, of the Xbox exclusives, the ones that release there, are day one Game Pass. As we know, they bought Bethesda, so they have their games on there. Starfield was like that. And then now, with buying Activision Blizzard, we expect all of their games on that. And of course, one of those is Call of Duty. So obviously a very big thing going on there. What else do they have to say about it? The report. Oh yeah. So from the president, Sarah Bond, who indicated all Microsoft games, including those developed by recently acquired Activision, will launch straight to Game Pass. Then there was a whole thing going on last week where they said, well, we don't really know what we're going to be doing. The people making the decisions, blah, blah, blah. New Call of Duty games sell for $70 and usually shift around 25 million copies per year. Let's just go like this. Let's do 25. How many zeros? That's 2,500,000. So one more zero times 70. So 1.75 billion. Is that right? That's 100,000, 700. Yeah, 1,750,000,000 dollars in sales. So I can't spell. 34 million. So I get their worry, right? Like their worry is that, okay, they sell 25 million copies, but how many of those 25 million are on PC? Well, I guess PC technically you can get Game Pass as well. But I would guess maybe 10 million of those are going to be Game Pass people. But they're also probably going to get another like 15 million that are people who wouldn't play the game normally, who are just going to give it a try. So all in all, I think it's a good thing. Do they go into anything? No, they don't. Of course, Activision will also launch Call of Duty across Xbox, PlayStation, and PC as the game can be bought outright. But with Game Pass subscribers numbers failing to grow meaningfully, Microsoft is under pressure to attract new customers. Adding a mainline Call of Duty game at launch will no doubt help with that. Yeah, the next game is expected to be Black Ops 6. So one thing that they don't go into here, and I really think they should have, is microtransactions. Because, like, what are they going to do with microtransactions? I wonder if that will hurt their bottom line. Personally, I wouldn't buy skins for a game that I could theoretically lose access to if they decide to pull it from Game Pass. Have they been pulling games from Game Pass that are owned by Xbox? I really don't see them doing that, but you make a good point, right? Like if you're getting it as a free-to-play game, if they can just pull it from that subscription service, that would really suck. But I don't think that they would do that. That would cause a lot of issues. I don't see them doing that. But then you have, going back to that, the microtransactions. If you get people playing the game on a subscription service, I think those players might be more likely to actually go in and buy microtransactions if they're enjoying the game. The big key there being if they're enjoying the game. Now, we're not done yet. Because if we go back here, go back to Twitter, we have Call of Duty 2024 expected to be Black Ops 6 is reportedly set to launch in late October, presumably October 25th, 2024 per multiple reports. The game is expected to be available for separate purchase on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, along with the day one Game Pass. So, the takeaway This game is going to be coming day one Game Pass, 100%. But as per leaks, we also know that there is going to be a Vault Edition, a Hardened Edition, whatever they're planning on calling it, a digital edition, that if you buy, you are going to get early access. So early access includes zombies, apparently, and campaign. Campaign should be no surprise. We're probably going to get that a week before multiplayer. But it's also rumored that zombies is going to be a week before that, so 2 weeks before multiplayer. You'll only be able to get that if you pre-order the game, if you pay for it, not if you are on Game Pass. So that's important. That's really, really important, because when a lot of people will pay the extra money. Now, I don't think that they're going to have an option to say pay $25 just for early access. You're going to have to pay the $130 for that early access. So really, if anything, this should boost their numbers, right? Because you're going to have the people who buy it to want to play it early. Those are your serious players. You're going to have your Game Pass players who, let's be modest and say it adds an extra 3 million players who wouldn't normally try out Call of Duty, but hey, I have Game Pass, let's try it out. That's 10% of the people who own Game Pass. Maybe, let's say, I'm sure they have these numbers, but I would love to know the percentage of players who play Call of Duty, what percentage of them buy microtransactions, even if it's just the Battle Pass. Say it's a third of the players who buy the Battle Pass. I think it's probably like half, but say it's a third of the players. So you get an extra 3 million players, and then a third of them buy at least one Battle Pass. That's 1 million people buying a, if you're getting Black Cell, $30 Battle Pass. That's 30 million extra dollars just from putting the game on Game Pass, plus the people who already buy it and play it. To me, this seems like a no-brainer. To me, it seems like something that, like, why wouldn't you do that? So, all in all, I think this is a win for people who maybe have Game Pass and don't want to spend $100 on Call of Duty and are just going to play those Xbox games anyway. Those are the people who are really winning here. No, the game is not going free to play. And the real question I have is, how is this going to affect the price of bundles and Battle Pass? Because if they, and by they, I mean the executives at Xbox and Microsoft, if they think, hey, this is now a free-to-play game, we can now charge $50 for bundles. Now we're going to run into a problem, right? So it'll be interesting to see where they go with this. But yeah, let's see. Charlie Intel just tweeted something else. It's not yet clear which tiers of Game Pass will have Call of Duty on day one. It is also not clear if Microsoft will increase the Game Pass prices. More info coming on June 9th. Of course. So that was the other thing that we heard, is that they might be increasing the price of Game Pass, and then there is different tiers of Game Pass, which maybe only the top one will have access to Call of Duty. That's something, again, we'll be looking at after June 9th. We're going to be getting a ton of Call of Duty information. So on my second channel, Call of Duty channel, a lot will be coming out over those days and weeks following. A lot of information to come there. But that is what we know as of right now. It is a super, super interesting thing to come out. It's never been done before. We've never seen Call of Duty on a subscription service, so now we will. But yeah, that's kind of that story. Now, I got the next video that we're going to watch here has to do with what we talked about at the beginning of the stream with Black Ops 6. Black Ops 6, it got announced that it's on Game Pass, if you weren't here at the beginning of the stream, that it's going to be day one on Game Pass. This video is titled Xbox Plan for Game Pass Growth Makes No Sense. It is by Paul Tassi, and we're going to watch it and see, now that we know what's going on here. This will be interesting after knowing what we know.
Right, I am back, not with a Hades video. I keep meaning to do a Hades video. I even recorded footage, but another Xbox video, because the situation over there just keeps getting crazier. So yes, this week we obviously talked about
Layoffs,
the shutdown of Tango and Arcane Austin, the developers of Hi-Fi Rush and Redfall, respectively. The decision to shut down the studios, especially that made Hi-Fi Rush, seems insane, but sort of reflects many larger problems with Xbox, of which there was a lot of reporting yesterday about various new things related to this. There is currently a debate about whether or not to put Call of Duty on Game Pass.
So as we now know, it is on Game Pass.
There's talk about, what's going to happen with Hellblade 2, if that could be successful, quote unquote, but not good enough for Microsoft. They might put that on PlayStation to sell copies because it'll be on Game Pass. And all of these issues sort of come back to the same thing. And that is a lot of questions about Microsoft's Game Pass model, how games are allowed to perform there, and what it takes to be considered a success there. My problem with...
So this is a good question, right? Because we just looked at this and we saw that Game Pass has 34 million subscribers. I guess those are public numbers. So we know that. So the question is, they want that number to go up. How do they do that? Well, what we know is that they have to pay studios to put good day one games on there. That's why people subscribe to Netflix. They're Netflix exclusives. Now, the interesting thing about video games, and this is actually the way that some movies work now too, is it'll come out day one on a subscription service. And then other things will not come out day one on a subscription service. So what we know from this is that for them to increase, so yeah, to get those numbers to go up, we need more games to draw people in. Even if they're not just on Xbox, if you can get them on Game Pass, for example, if there's 2 games that are coming out in a month and I can get both of them on Game Pass, it is so much of a better deal for me to get Game Pass than it is to pay for both of those games. So anyway, let's continue with what he's saying.
With this is that we simply have no real frame of reference in terms of what Microsoft considers a success on Game Pass and what their plan is for the future. The Call of Duty question feels like a real kind of linchpin moment for this entire concept, where you've said the whole time all your exclusive games are going to be
this is a great time to watch this because we just got information on this.
Day one Game Pass, so that should in theory include Call of Duty, but in doing that you give up billions of dollars in revenue over the long term.
No, you don't. Okay, so this is what we just talked about. I don't know why people are saying this. First of all, Call of Duty makes most of their money off of microtransactions now. Also, 34 million people are subscribed to it. What percentage of people are going to be playing on Game Pass? Do you think half? The article we read said Call of Duty expects to sell 25 million copies. So half of them. You think half of them are going to be paying on Game Pass? Well, you're not losing money on sales because you're probably going to make it up in subscription sales. I don't think this is even... And then we talked about it. If you can make $300 million if 1/3 of the players that wouldn't have played Call of Duty that are already on Game Pass pay it and just get a battle pass, you've made $300 million. And those are low estimates. Plus, people who are on Game Pass are probably going to be more likely to buy. I don't even think there's a thought behind that.
Or, forgoing those sales on a platform where Call of Duty is extremely popular. So you're kind of screwed either way. But I'm leaning toward the fact that I think they're going to triple down on Game Pass and put it there as one last lure to get people to sign up.
I don't think that's their one last lure. I think on June 9th, they're also going to announce that every previous Call of Duty game is on Game Pass now. They all come out. I bet you that's at least 1 million people. I'd go subscribe to that. If I could play every single Call of Duty game on PC and be able to play them all online, play all of the campaigns, I would go buy Game Pass. Because 1, I can make a bunch of videos about it, and 2, I played Call of Duty for 16 years now. If I could go back and play all of them easily through Game Pass, I don't have to go scrambling through my closet and look for every single CD that I own. That's a no-brainer to me.
What I don't understand is what the plan is for longer term subscriber growth of Game Pass.
Okay.
Because we know it has slowed just absolutely exponentially compared to the big surges that we saw during the pandemic.
That is true.
Everyone was home. Everyone was gaming more. The value of Game Pass kept going up and up and up with all the stuff added. But at a certain point, you've just reached saturation. And there are really very few wells left to, dig into for more subscribers. And I don't think Microsoft has come out with a coherent argument, for Game Pass to continue to expand at this point, and why they should continue to just solely rely on Game Pass as sort of the future and put all their exclusives on there day one, and like why that is a good way to support the ecosystem. Again, I'm not arguing this is bad for players. Like, this is not, it's quote player friendly, but obviously I think it is causing larger damage with
I don't fully understand his point here, but I'll keep listening.
The platform as a whole. And if your platform is damaged beyond repair, guess what? You don't really get to experience as many good games, or you see talented studios shut down like we're seeing already in layoffs. The Game Pass ecosystem is heavily limited by Xbox console sales. That is very clear at this point because...
Is that true? Because Game Pass is also on PC, but I don't see a lot of people using Game Pass on PC. I don't. And I would love to know the reason for that. Anyone in chat, does anyone on PC have Game Pass? I have questions if you do.
What is there beyond Xbox console sales? There is PC, where games launch day and date on PC, and then in Game Pass Ultimate, you can get these day one Xbox games on PC. Even still, if you are a dedicated PC gamer.
As an Xbox Game Pass user, I think it's a fantastic news for me, as I've played every single... Hey, J-God, what's up? Played every single COD game, so this is fantastic news in my opinion. I just buy my games on Steam. I'm not... That's J-God. So, like, but what I'm... Like, Steam is so good for what it is. You buy the game, it's on there, you have your library, it's easy to use. But, like, if they're expanding this, they have to have it on both PC and Xbox. If they don't, he's right in what he's saying here, that it's completely dependent on Xbox game sales. And let's be honest, console sales are going to keep going down. With the way technology is, and even cloud gaming, even though I think it's pretty far off of being good, those sales are going to keep going down. So if it's completely dependent upon that, it's not going to work. So they need the PC component of it to be bigger than it is.
Where you are probably gaming most of the time on Steam. That may or may not be enough for you to subscribe. Like, if you're a primarily PC gamer, are you going to be convinced necessarily to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass for Game Pass releases on PC? Maybe.
Another point here, I play Call of Duty. When the new Call of Duty comes out, I will just buy it. It will not make me get Game Pass. But if every old Call of Duty is on Game Pass, that would make me buy Game Pass.
Maybe, but I think there's a relatively small pool of harder core PC games.
How does Sony respond to boost console sales? Easy. Good exclusive games. That's the exact thing that they've done for years.
Gamers that are also bothering to sign up for Xbox Game Pass, and I do not think that is a segment that is growing. Another segment that Microsoft is really, really, nuts to go after is this idea that people who do not own consoles will want to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass so they can play through other devices through cloud streaming. This is, playing on your tablet, playing on your smart TV, like all these other places you can play Xbox games without needing a console. The problem is cloud gaming is a really, really niche market, and it is really slowly expanding over time. It is a tiny part of the market, as Microsoft itself.
It will be a big part of the market, I think, after the next console generation.
Said in its court cases where there were concerns about having a cloud streaming monopoly, but they're like, it's barely a part of the business. It's fine. It doesn't matter. But like, that is something that they believe is going to be part of the future. But
It will
I
be.
have not seen the tech,
Yeah.
evolve to a point where that feels necessary. But even conceptually, I don't think this makes a lot of sense, because like the games you have on Xbox Game Pass, granted, it's a wide range of games, but you're asking people to pay, what is it, 100, 140, 160, I don't even know what it is now. It's a lot for access to all of these games, the vast majority of which are like really traditional core video games. And if you are really into traditional core video games, you probably own an Xbox or a PlayStation or a PC already. I don't think there is this giant untapped market of gamers that would be, really into these games. Would they just not have to spend $300, $400, $500 on a console? Instead, I think at best, you are going to end up with people that don't buy an Xbox.
Okay, so keep in mind I'm in Canada, and this seems to be the prices. So you can join 14 days for $1. Ignore that. PC is $11.99 a month. You get EA Play membership, new games day one, member deals and discounts, whatever that means. Hundreds of high quality games. Okay, what do you get for the ultimate? New games on day one. Oh, online console multiplayer. So you don't need that on PC. Keep that in mind. So I don't even know why that would be under PC, because it specifically says. So then we have our consoles. So that's essentially the same thing. Catalog of over 25 high quality games. Both. So yeah, Ultimate is $18.99. So let's say it's $20 times 12, $240 a year. It's not cheap. So put it this way, if you're buying, say you're buying $70 games, you essentially need to play 4 $70 games on day one using Game Pass to recoup your cost. I think most people would. Like, that makes sense to me. It's expensive, don't get me wrong, but...
And instead of buying an Xbox, they just do Game Pass and cloud gaming, which cuts into your Xbox sales. And speaking of Xbox sales, we know that they've stopped reporting these numbers like forever at this point, because they were so far behind their competition. It was just sort of embarrassing every time they reported them. And they say they don't care as much. They just want, gaming revenue. They want Game Pass numbers and stuff like that. But again, like, the primary way you expand Game Pass is expanding consoles, because that is the primary way.
I don't agree with this. Cloud gaming is where you don't have to have a PC or console. If you have a tablet and good internet, you can play any game, and it's all processed over the internet. I believe it is the future of gaming, because one, PCs are expensive, and some people don't want a PC for a PC. They just want to play games. And let's say I have a controller and a smart TV. I could play any video game at top graphics if I have fast enough internet. I don't think internet infrastructure is there. I don't think like any sort of servers are there yet, but one day they will be, but not yet. And I also, what he was saying here, it's all based off of console sales. I don't believe that, because we just looked at it. There's the PC portion of it too. Unless there is something that I'm missing there where it doesn't work well on PC, that's the only other thing that I can
Most people are going to want to subscribe. And if you're limiting your reach by, like, quote, not caring about consoles, and you're fine with 30% declines over and over and over again with your hardware, because you're making the case that you don't need an Xbox. You can play on PC. You can play on your tablet. You don't even need, Game Pass. You can just wait for the port to PlayStation, which just started, but like, it is going to start ramping up and up with more and more games. And they've just been selling the idea that you don't need an Xbox, even though I would argue the Xbox is the primary point which these subscriptions are generated.
Probably.
So it feels like they just have so few cards left to play. I think one of those cards is Call of Duty, because Call of Duty is a big enough game, big enough series where if you say, okay, if you subscribe to Game Pass, you are going to get the new Call of Duty every year for free, quote unquote, even though the total cost of Game Pass is obviously more than a yearly Call of Duty game. That could be a draw for some players that may not otherwise be subscribed yet. That could convert some.
I'm telling you, June 9th, they're going to announce every Call of Duty is on Game Pass. I'm calling
PlayStation players, but like, again, I don't know how much room for growth this is. It feels like everybody that owns an Xbox that wants Game Pass is probably going to have it at this point, and especially if they keep upping the price, which they are allegedly going to do again, that is not going to, encourage even more signups from those that are kind of on the fence about it. And it feels weird to rely on Game Pass sustainability and Game Pass growth in a way where there does not feel like there's a clear path forward in terms of how to grow the ecosystem. And, Microsoft always wanted to be the Netflix of gaming. They thought, okay, Netflix is destroying everyone with its subscription model. Like, we can do that too. Like, it's going to be, we're going to be first in class. And, while Game Pass is, the most successful model of its kind in terms of like a system that offers sort of day one releases of big games, it's different than the streaming space. Like, first of all, a bunch of other rival streaming services to Netflix trying to do the same thing have failed or are failing or are losing tons of money because it is very hard to execute this and produce, high quality content that is offset by subscription.
It's the licensing fees, right? They don't have to worry about that with Call of Duty because Call of Duty is owned by Xbox. With these first party games, they can put them on there without a licensing fee because they own them. Other games, let's use Assassin's Creed, the new one, the Shadows one. If they wanted that on day one Game Pass, they would have to pay a giant fee to Ubisoft to have it on there. And even have it on there in general. If they want it day one, it's going to be even more expensive for them because that's going to take off of Ubisoft sales. So they need to recoup it without ever they're getting paid by Xbox. Problem is that it's very expensive. So they need a ton of subscribers. And that's why Netflix for such a long time was able to do this. And the one reason why Amazon Prime or Prime Video could come in and actually take a portion of the market is because Jeff Bezos has big dick money and could come in and be like, look at my dick. And all of a sudden he could pay as much, if not more than Netflix, not because his streaming service was doing well, because he has big dick money.
Numbers and payments. And then Netflix himself, the Prime, they're having trouble because their market is saturated as well for the most part. So they're trying to pull out their last bag of tricks, like killing password sharing and things like this. I think they're going to not report subscriber numbers going forward too, because Wall Street hates every time their subscriber numbers don't grow or go down a little bit. But Netflix, contrary to Microsoft, cranks out, really, really popular and or good shows all the time. Like, every week goes by and there's a couple of new Netflix shows. Like, if they're not, some of them are really good. Many of them are not, but even the not good ones are really widely watched. It's a reason for, people to keep their Netflix subscription because there's always something new. That's not true with Game Pass. The Game Pass idea is like, yes, it has this larger collection of games. Old games are added to it over time. And then there's these day one releases, but these big day one releases for Game
I don't know if I agree with
Game Pass are so few and far between. How many truly huge Game Pass releases are there a year? 2, 3?
I don't know that answer. I guess what he is saying is true. And honestly, like I said, my reason for getting Game Pass wouldn't be the day one releases. I don't really care about that. Most games you have to pay to get the game early at this point, which isn't going to be on Game Pass. Like, it actually kind of counterintuitively contradicts what Game Pass is doing. But the old games, to have every old Call of Duty or every old whatever, I think that's more what they got to be going for, I think.
But
maybe I'm wrong.
Like, last year, it was like Starfield. And it was Hi-Fi Rush, which was a surprise. Those were like the main.
That's another good point, BRRT. He just said if they add older Call of Duties to Game Pass, would it include paid DLC? I hope so. because that would be another reason to play it on Game Pass. A great example of this is Call of Duty World at War. Without the DLC, you can barely play that game because it still puts you in DLC maps. And if you don't have them, it just kicks you from the lobby and then you can't find a game. So I would hope that it would do that. That would be another reason that for COD players,
more or less. And in this year, it's what? Hellblade 2. And then if they maybe do Call of Duty, like, again, it's like 2 big releases a year as opposed to Netflix where you can peruse through.
And this is actually a good point. I do actually agree with him. He sold me on this idea. There's not enough day one launches. 2 a year is not enough. The only one I can think of 2 last year: Atomic Heart and Starfield. Those are the only 2 I can think of last year. If you have any that I don't know of, let me know in chat. But those are the only 2 I can think of.
6 new shows and movies every week. It's a different system, and like Microsoft cannot pump out games like that. This quote from Matt Booty that they need smaller games that are big hits. Like, you're not turning around games in 14 months or like a year and a half. Like, even these quote small games, Hi-Fi Rush took 4 or 5 years. Something that just seems like, oh, this is
That's why Call of Duty is such a big thing to put on Game Pass. It's the only AAA game that comes out every year. That's not like a sports game.
Fun project by like a couple of dudes, like Palworld. Palworld still took 3 years. Like, you cannot just crank out huge hits in a short amount of time in order to like keep people being like, oh, there's this on Game Pass, there's this on Game Pass. Like, the industry doesn't work like that. And granted, there are problems not doing this. I've talked many times about Sony and their giant budgets on their games have to be offset by these big sales, and they're running into issues there. They really need to start relying on live games for ongoing revenue, which they had Helldivers as a huge success despite their recent.
There was a game that came out in the past year, Alan Wake 2, a huge game. I don't think they recovered the cost of making the game yet. I could be wrong. It might have happened now, but it was months and months after the game launched, and they never recouped the cost of making it because the game is so expensive to make.
Hiccup, that's still a big success for them. And then you have, the place that's performing the best, obviously, is always Nintendo, who is not doing layoffs, who is, expanding things, about to launch new hardware. Nintendo always sort of has it made lately, but there are cross problems between the PlayStation model and the Microsoft model. But it feels to me like the Game Pass issues are easier to see, and I don't think Microsoft has a coherent or compelling vision in terms of how Game Pass extends into the future and is sustainable. The room for growth does not appear to be there. Even if cloud gaming became like the number one source of gaming in the country, which it is not going to be, I wouldn't say it's going to be in 10 years. I still don't think it will. You still run into the conceptual problem of trying to convert non-console gamers into cloud gamers playing the same games. And again, I don't think the barrier to entry for games.
Interesting question, Matt. Would you want a bunch of AAA games so frequently, though? Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. The main game you play is Call of Duty, correct? Because people who play live service games, like Call of Duty, like Destiny, like WoW, like Diablo, like those games, they play them so much that that's what they play. If you are someone who plays Alan Wake 2, Starfield, all of these like kind of like story games or campaign games, yeah, COD is the only newer game you play. If that is the type of player you are, Game Pass is not for you. If you play a live service game and pretty much solely a live service game, there is no point of getting Game Pass. You have to be a player or a gamer who wants to play every single game that comes out, and that's what you do. And I'm kind of in between the two. I play a lot of Call of Duty. It's also my job. But I also like all of these new, like for example, the other day we played Hades 2. Hades 2 is freaking awesome. Like, I like playing these new games that come out. And sometimes I only play them once. I'll play them for 2 hours and be like, that was fun, but I'm not going to beat it. Other times I'm like, holy shit, we need to beat this game. And yeah, with games being like that lately, like the live service model, they have to look at that and be like, people who play live service games are only going to play that game and maybe like one or two other ones. And Game Pass will not work for them. It's not worth it for them.
Gaming is owning a console or not. It's just whether it's like sort of part of your lifestyle, if you have time to play, if it interests you. The console barrier, if you remove the console barrier, all you're doing is selling less consoles. So,
by the way, that may have been sounded negative, me talking to you like, oh, you just play Call of Duty. There's just zero wrong with that. It's just like, if that's what you play, then yeah, of course you're not going to want a bunch of AAA games.
Again, potentially good for the player, which is great, but as a strategy for Microsoft, not great. And even if things, seem player forward, if they end up hurting the games, hurting development, hurting the developers, causing layoffs, causing brand trust erosion, it's not good ultimately for everybody. So I don't know what they're doing over there. I don't think they know what they're doing over there. The fact that they're debating whether or not to put Call of Duty on Game Pass and it's about to be announced in a month, and they paid $70 billion for Activision.
This is the best point he's made the entire time. Yeah, that probably should have been a decision that they made before they bought Call of Duty.
Activision Blizzard.
Like, were they over there like expecting not to buy it? Being like, let's like pulling an Elon Musk and being like, I want to buy this. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, like,
Call of Duty is their biggest series by far. Like, it's crazy that they would still like not have a coherent idea of what they're doing there. And this question extends to a number of games, like the smaller games. How is Hellblade going to be considered a success when all we have to go is Game Pass player count or whatever? Like, what is the metric? You would think, okay, maybe it's just acclaim, and then Hi-Fi Rush, super well received, winning awards, all the acclaim you could want. They're dead. Doesn't matter. So, what is the metric for success here? We don't know. Well, it sucks. It's stupid. I
think we know what the metric for success is. Game Pass subscriptions up. That's what
they want. For all the developers who were laid off, and it appears like more layoffs are probably coming, not just in the industry, but at Xbox specifically. And I'd say things are going to get worse before they get better, but like I don't know. I just don't understand what they're doing. I don't think leadership has been good during this whole time period.
He made a couple of really good points in there. Good video. I disagreed with some of this stuff. Specifically about console sales and them directly being related with Game Pass. I think if anything, with PC game numbers going up and up and up, I think actually what they should be focusing on is getting Game Pass as more of a mainstay for PC gamers. If they can take over Xbox, PC, and cloud users as Game Pass subscriptions, that's a big bonus. But I also see the ultimate, you get the console Game Pass or console online subscription, which is of course a big thing as well. So I see where he's going with that. I just don't necessarily agree with it. But the best point he made out of that entire thing is you just bought Call of Duty, WoW, Diablo, Hearthstone, like these other games, and you don't know whether you're going to put them on Game Pass or not. Like, should that not be the no-brainer of it? $70 billion. Okay, let's not do anything with it. No, you want to use that as your golden goose. Especially when they buy it the year before a 4-year Call of Duty is coming out. That's never happened. Put that freaking thing on Game Pass and try to get those if you can get your subscriptions up 5 million, you're laughing. You've made your money back because most of those people are not going to unsubscribe for a year. That's more money than they would have spent on just Call of Duty. So, yeah, that is the best point that he made, and I actually find that kind of ridiculous. I never thought of it that way, but great video. Check it out.